I'm Rachel Archambault from Talking with Tech.
And I'm Chris Bouguet from Talking with Tech.
We have a podcast dedicated to augmentative and alternative communication, all things related to helping kids with complex communication needs.
If you have a passion for helping people with language disabilities, this is the show for you. Each episode features an interview or a roundtable discussion on a topic related to augmentative communication and helping people with language disabilities.
And we're really passionate about giving practical strategies to clinicians working in the field who are working with children or adults, anything related to AAC.
So you can look us up on iTunes, or you can find us on Facebook. We got a group over there, or check out our website at bit.ly/TWT podcast.
Please join our community of professionals that are working to ensure that everyone can say whatever they want to say, however they want to say it.
Please listen carefully.
What is communication?
An essential behavior of life. We have the both blessing and responsibility of trying to foster another.
It's the strongest way for two people to convey information to each other.
Communication is a lifeline.
It's just connection with other people.
Connecting people in terms of ideas, thoughts, or needs.
Draws us out of ourselves, draws us into that relationship, builds up our families. Without it, we'd be lost.
Whatever it is that we do to express intent and achieve an impact.
Communication is the ability to express your needs, wants, frustrations, and desires to anyone that you feel needs to have that information.
Welcome to Speech Science, episode 87. We're proud members of the Exceptional Podcasts Network, counting down those digits until we hit number 100. I'm excited for that. I'm your host, Matt Hott, joined, as always, in the Bluegrass State, Michelle Wintering.
Hi, Matt.
Hi, Michelle. And hanging out in the city of brotherly love, Michael McLeod.
What's up, buddy?
Hey, buddy. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, guys. It has been a crazy week. We had the first day of school, first day back as official school SLPs yesterday here in my district. The students come tomorrow, Wednesday the 14th. I'm finishing up a crazy 10-hour podcast conspiracy theory about the Second Civil War, so my brain's kind of worried about that one. And then last night I interviewed probably the most heartbreaking interview that I've ever done. You guys might not know this, but tomorrow is the 14th is the 18-month anniversary of the Parkland Stoneman Douglas shootings, and I had an opportunity to sit down with Rachel Archambault, and we're going to be running her interview today during this podcast. So it's been a whirlwind of emotions in the last 7 days.
And she is a speech pathologist from that school, right?
Correct. She's been there for 4 years, and she said in her interview that she could open the door. It's kind of like a California-style school where there's like outdoor walkways, and she could look down the hallway to the building where the shooting was.
And she was there that day?
She was there that day with students.
Wow.
With students in her room.
Wow.
So we talk a little bit about that. So it's been a whirlwind of emotions. I'm excited for that interview. Guys, how have your weeks been? Because mine's been crazy, and it's only going to get crazier. How about you guys?
Why does school start so early for you? Starts tomorrow?
Because we're Ohio, so we got to get it in before deer season, I guess. I don't know.
The schools here in Kentucky, it's even earlier, which threw me off.
I was going to say.
They started August 1st.
We don't start until after Labor Day.
Yeah, man, I don't know.
That's crazy. Do you finish faster?
Early, mid-May.
Okay, yeah. We go until like probably mid-June or early June, maybe.
Ugh.
Yeah.
You get out in early May, Matt? Wow.
Like mid-May, like in between the 10th and the 20th.
Like before Memorial Day?
Right around, yeah.
Yeah.
It just all kind of depends on how they do. Here in Ohio, they change the rules from hours or from days to hours. So you have to have a certain amount of hours.
Because of snow days.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And I think that's also why we start so early, is so that way if we get hit with some weird blizzard and the kids are out of school for 10 days, we have some wriggle room. So.
There you go. Wriggle room?
Wriggle room.
Wriggle room.
All right, let's make fun of me. All right.
No, I'm right there with you because earlier I was trying to say real world connections or something, and I was like, wheel weld.
Wheel weld. All right, how have your weeks been? What's been going on?
Doing well. We actually had, I think I told you all last week on the podcast, we had all 4 of James's grandparents, my son's grandparents. So my parents and my in-laws were all in town over the weekend. So we got some good family time in, and a whirlwind trip for people, but well worth it to spend time with family.
Mike?
Yeah, it's been definitely a very busy week. Working a lot in teams with other SLPs, preparing for the school year. Lots of IEP meetings, lots of collaboration. So it's been great. I always love meeting other speech pathologists and picking their brains and learning more from them. So been focusing on that over the past couple of weeks.
That is awesome. And we want to pick your brain. If you're listening and you say, I have an idea, make sure you head over to speechsciencepodcast.com. And from there, you can email us speechsciencepodcast@gmail.com. Give us a phone call, 614-681-1798, or hit us up on the hashtag SSPod and talk directly to Michelle and Michael. And of course, if you like what we do, head over to patreon.com/speechsciencepodcast. Coming up on today's episode, I talked about Rachel Archambault. We will have her interview about Stoneman Douglas. We're also going to talk about what is happening with the Philadelphia Eagles and autism. We'll talk a little bit about how you can improve your eye tracking devices for your students. And also, what is the big brouhaha between the Autism Speaks and the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network and Sesame Street. But I thought we'd start off with a pretty easy topic. ASHA today has released 7 tech resolutions for the new school year. Michael, this is your favorite topic of all time, kids and their devices.
Yeah, it's definitely not my favorite topic, but it's something I'm constantly being asked about.
You're passionate.
Yeah, and this is the world we live in now, where ASHA's being forced to release stuff like this. But this is it's definitely good that they're making a comment on it, because this is where speech and language is certainly headed. So kind of just setting out an action plan for families and different strategies they can try, things they can focus on, because a lot of families are in the dark about this. Do I give it to my child so they're calm and relaxed, or do I try to limit it and look more towards long-term benefits? And that's certainly what ASHA is pushing for that long-term cognitive care of decreasing screen time. And I think they did a really nice job with this list. I think it's very easy to read for parents. I think it's something that SLPs could print out and provide directly to families. It's available right there on the ASHA.org. So it's something I highly recommend all you SLP listeners out there take a look at and possibly print out and provide to some of your parents.
The 7 steps, they say: make and stick to a plan, focus on quality time, make dinner time sacred, keep bedtime use off limits, limit tech during homework time, get involved with your kiddo, and then elevate the conversation. Michelle, I know you've got a young one. Have you and your husband thought about tech time with baby speech science?
You know, I think we've realized that even as simple as our phones, right, that we have adults around him a lot of times, and we have our phones with us, or we have to check them for work, or we need to pull up an email, that as cute as it is, we see him picking up his toy phone or picking up other things to answer hello and play phone. I've realized, think about how many people he sees in a given day looking at and holding their phones, right? So it's something we'll talk about as he gets older with making guidelines and limits. But I really like this list from ASHA, and I love their focus in true ASHA speech language fashion of focusing on like number 3, making dinner time sacred and keeping bedtime off limits. And their reasonings for both include the communication part, the speech language social skills that are part of dinner time and part of meal times that we already know, and then bedtime, that it takes away from, not only does it interfere with sleep, but it also takes away from times like reading before bed that we've talked about on the podcast. So I like the list. I'm going to save it so that I can share it with people, and also as a reference for myself.
I know I'm getting too addicted to my device when during first day trainings and second day trainings, it was like torture to just sit there and not be able to look at my phone for 35 minutes. And that's probably a bad thing.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
I was like, what if I've got an email that I need to delete from Goodwrench telling me about tire sales? And did someone like one of my comments on Facebook? Sorry, Mike. What were you going to say?
Oh, do you have to delete? I'm terrible.
Yeah, I do. I can't.
My husband laughs about it because I have tons of unread messages because I don't open the junk mail. I just don't touch it.
I'm upset because I have 118 unknown unread messages that I can't figure out.
Mine probably says 700, Matt. It would stress you out.
Sorry, Mike, what were you going to say?
At least you're willing to admit you have the problem, because every single person was feeling that exact same way. Every single person gets that detachment when it's in the pocket. They can't look at it when they transition from summer where they're able to look at it all the time. You know, everyone gets that little, you know, sometimes I'll leave it charging at home and I'll go outside and I'll go somewhere. Maybe I'll run to the store quick. And there's at least 5 or 6 times where I pat my pants pocket looking for it. And you start to get that separation anxiety. It's real, man.
2,000, Michelle's showing us 2,970 unread emails. Michelle, you should probably look at your phone more often.
Those are all from listeners of Speech Science. Asking us questions.
I just don't check email on my phone. Sorry.
This is a good list. And if you want Michelle not to read your emails, you can head over to our website, speechsciencepodcast.com. Email us, speechsciencepodcast@gmail.com. Give us a phone call or text message. They come in as emails, by the way, 614-681-1798 or hashtag SSPod. All right,
we
guys.
We don't really get junk mail to that account, so we're good.
That's true. We don't really get any junk mail. That's because I monitor it every 30 seconds.
Every 30 seconds.
That's right.
All right, guys. I figured we can open up a can of worms. How familiar are you guys with the Autism Speaks organization?
Pretty familiar with it.
I would say more surface level.
So a few years ago, they made the change because they used to say that they were looking for a cure for autism. And they're the ones that have the little puzzle pieces, and they upset a lot of people because it's not something that can really be cured, and we've talked about that before. Well, recently they've gotten, and in the last couple of years, they've removed cure from their mission statement. And if you remember a couple weeks back, we talked about how they were instrumental working with Sesame Street for Julia to get that commercial that we showed on Speech Science about getting your children screened.
Yep.
Well, the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network says it's ending a years-long partnership with Sesame Street due to the PSA because they are concerned with the Autism Speaks 100-Day Kit, which the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network says contains a stigmatizing view on life with a child on the spectrum.
Interesting.
So which autism group? I'm trying to
so
check.
Autistic Self-Advocacy Network is a group that represents people with autism, or the autistics that they prefer themselves to be called in that group, representing their needs and wants and their views on how they are viewed by society.
Okay, and now I understand. Okay.
Yeah, and then Autism Speaks is an organization that works for rights of people with autism. But one of the negatives against Autism Speaks is on its 26-member board, only 2 people have autism. So they say it doesn't make sense that, they don't represent fully the whole thing. But I picked this topic because I feel like this goes a long way that we've talked about before. It's really important that we know who our audience is. And as SLPs, just because we have 6 kids on the autism spectrum, it doesn't mean that their families and them all view themselves the same way.
It's that saying that I think applies to much more than autism, but the whole saying of if you've met a person with autism, you have met one person with autism. Same goes for their families and what their perceptions are.
Exactly. The whole point of it being a spectrum disorder, basically to minimize that, or not to minimize that, to summarize that, it's really just it's really something that really tailors to the individual. and you're not going to meet two people that are the same, that have the same issues, and you're not going to meet two families that interpret it the same way and want to be labeled the same way and want to deal with it the same way. And that makes our job as SLPs that much more complicated, but also that much more fulfilling, in that we are masters at treating the individual and recognizing individual interests and individual strengths. And we are relationship experts, because that's what communication is all about. I was just talking to someone today about executive functioning and ADHD and how it all comes down to language and relationships. And that's really what SLPs do best. It's what we do best. And that's what we have to do when we work with these families and these individuals, is build the relationships, see where their head's at, see what they want to do, see what their own personal goals are, their own personal preferences. And we tailor our therapy and our care to that. And we do our best to improve overall quality of life.
And I think that's the beauty of our job, right? Just like you said, Mike, that it is individualized education plans. It's individual plans of care. We are not, slapping down a blanket list of goals for a person with autism. We're looking at a specific kid or a specific patient.
The Autistic Self-Advocacy Network even said in a statement, the 100-Day Kit by the Autism Speaks group encourages parents to blame family difficulties on their autistic child and to view autism as a terrible disease for which their child can't get better. They continue to say they recommend compliance-based therapies and pseudoscientific autism diets, but fail to educate families about communication supports. It even instructs parents to go through the 5 stages of grief after learning that their child is autistic, as if they would had the child died.
So I was just looking at that same paragraph, and I had a couple thoughts. But one, I agree with the part of we're failing to educate parents about communication supports, of course. But I will say, every time I do an evaluation, when it's the first time that a parent is hearing a diagnosis or something else, and as a parent, that I think there is going to be, whether it's those 5 stages of grief or something else, that if you find out your child is going to face anything in life that is slightly out of what we might have pictured for our child, and autism is probably outside, like it's a different path than you might have thought for your kid, there's going to be a little bit of grieving. It doesn't mean they won't find the beauty in it. But
I had a parent tell me one time that when he found out that his child had autism, the child, he thought he had died that day, but he was gifted a brand new child that was going to live the life that they were supposed to live. So like he explained it kind of like he thought his child was going to go on and be this, XYZ, everything that you think that your child is going to be. And instead it was like somebody threw him a curveball and said, your plan doesn't matter. Here's what the real plan is going to be. Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's tough.
These parents are, bar none, the strongest people on the face of this earth, period. The way that they handle it, the way that they love their child and take their kid to therapy after a long day of work and do everything they can to deal with it in their own personal way. Some of the parents I work with, words cannot express my opinion of them and my overall thoughts. It's really amazing what they deal with, and some of the stuff that we're talking about in terms of Autism Speaks or whatever it may be. At the end of the day, it's all about the parents.
We want to hear from you, though. However, head over to our website, speechsciencepodcast.com. And from there, you can email us, speechsciencepodcast@gmail.com, or give us a phone call, 614-681-1798. Or if they have the Instagram, what is that?
#SSPod and speech_science is our username.
You knew that.
I know, but I like to get you guys in on it. Coming up after the break, Rachel Archambault and her ordeal and how she became the PTSDSLP. You're listening to Speech Science.
Do you have an idea for a product or book? Or are you ready to go beyond in-service presentations? Well, how do you get started? And what if you don't have any business experience at all? Well, I have some great news for you. I'm Mei-Ling Chan, and I'm getting the nitty-gritty stories from parents, teachers, therapists, advocates, and people with disabilities who have created successful businesses, and they're sharing their intimate stories with you. Listen to us on the Exceptional Leaders Podcast and fast-track creating and building and sharing your idea with the world so that you can help more people.
Welcome back to Speech Science. I'm Matt Hott. Honored today to be sitting with Rachel Archambault. Did I say it right?
Yes, you did. Great job.
A speech and language pathologist down at Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Before there, you were a private practice and SNF PRN SLP, and you're joining us today because you have started something pretty awesome called the PTSDSLP. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start off at the beginning. Before we get into anything, what made you want to become a speech and language pathologist?
Okay, so I've been saying I wanted to be a speech pathologist since I was probably 5 years old. I have younger twin brothers, and they had all the strikes against them, that they were preemies, they're twins, they're boys. My dad had speech issues. So they had a private speech pathologist in the house, and I was jealous that they got to have candy all the time. So I would fake a list or whatever to like get her attention and to get candy. And then as I got older, I realized that being able to trick a kid to do this for therapy that's beneficial for them was awesome. So I wanted to do that. And then later on, I found out you could work with adults, you could do all these things. And I have never changed my major. I went right in, and since I was 5.
Where did you go to undergrad, and where did you go to grad school?
I did both at University of Central Florida in Orlando.
Okay. So we're kind of rivals. I'm a UC fan, so I know UCF is sort of better than us in a lot of things. So
yes, we are.
Now, in fairness, I went to Ohio University. I didn't go to UC, so
okay.
I just grew up there. So that's kind of the thing.
Gotcha.
So then out of school, is that when you went into the hospital in the PRN setting, or were you right into the schools?
So I do all of those right now. I know clinical fellows have a little bit of difficulty getting right into the medical setting. So I joined a contract company, and they put me at Stoneman Douglas High School, which is actually my rival high school. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. So I went to JP Taravella High School, and they told me, oh, you're going to a middle school called Douglas. And I was like, you might want to check that. And they got back to me. They're like, yes, it's a high school and you'll be going there. So I fell in love with it there. And I've been there ever since. And about almost 2 years ago, I joined a private practice that I do after school. And then just like last month, I started PRN at a SNF. So doing all this stuff together.
I understand you. I worked in a high school. I'm now in a middle school, and I do home care with adults. So I'm right there with you. So you made it through your CFY. You did you got your C's, did all that. And then February 14th, 2018, right?
Yes.
Where were you? What happened? And then for anyone that doesn't know, we're talking Stoneman Douglas in Parkland, Florida, the school shooting, correct?
Yes. So I was in my little tiny office that was previously a security office. And if you open my door, I was on the second floor, and I looked right out across at this building. So I'm not good at math, so I don't know how many feet away it was.
Yeah.
But it was like, it would take me 1 minute to walk there. So that day, I was live streaming the Winter Olympics. A lot of my kids are from Florida, so like they don't watch the Olympics. They may not have been old enough to see any of the Olympics or remember it. And then they definitely don't remember the Winter Olympics. So I was live streaming it, using it as part of my lessons. At 9:30 that morning, we had a fire drill, and it just, working in schools, it's kind of just so common. You're a zombie, you walk out there and you come back, and it's just part of your day. At 2:19, I had a coworker come into the room that he was on planning, and I had one kid left in the room. I had just sent 4 kids back to that building. It was the end of their speech session. Sent them back to that building. And then at 2:21, the fire alarm went off again. me and the other teacher kind of looked at each other and we're like, again, great. And that morning we actually had a department meeting that said that we were going to have a code red drill that was going to sound very lifelike. So,
what's a code red drill?
A code red drill is active shooter drill.
Oh, okay.
So we were told that it was going to sound very lifelike. And I was friends with the track coach, and I know that she has like one of those starter guns with the blanks. So I was aware that of that sound, and I've been around like gun ranges and stuff, so I know the sound of it. So the alarm went off, forced everyone out of the room. I was like, let's go, guys, just something we got to do. So it was just something that we had to do. And then I walk outside and I start hearing shots. Once I got out of the room, I kind of like do a quick glance. I look at the other teacher. I'm like, oh, it's that code red drill they meant today. That's when we're doing it. So I was like, all right, let's go do this. But then when I looked around, I could see that no one was like in their posts, the security that was supposed to be there. And it just seemed very like eerie to me. And then the sounds of the shots kept going. We knew something was wrong. I like held on to my girl's backpack. I threw her back in my room, and then the other teacher disappeared. About 7 minutes later, he came back with 2 other kids that I didn't know, but I hid them under my desk. And as like a speech pathologist, we're constantly typecast that we have like these tiny rooms.
Right.
So it wasn't a classroom size. And I put the 3 kids under my tiny little desk. I put my rolly chair in front of them, but I had large windows that covered an entire wall of it.
Wow.
So I ended up being in my room for 2.5 hours with another teacher and 3 kids. We're over in the Everglades as well. So we don't get service too well. And then the cell phone service was jammed.
Oh my gosh.
It was like, it was surreal, the whole thing. That now when I explain it, I was like, it felt like forever, but it also felt like 30 seconds, the whole thing.
And I was going to say the active shooter was only in the building for about 30 or 45 minutes?
7 minutes.
7 minutes.
The whole thing happened in 7 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
So by the time that the other teacher went out, we went out and exited and heard everything, and then got back in our room, and he brought me back the other 2 kids. The whole thing was over. So
wow.
It was really, really crazy. And we were in there for 2.5 hours. We were stuck. And one of the reasons was because it said security above my room.
Oh, wow.
One of the cops came to break down all the doors pretty much. They looked at it and they were like, oh, not a classroom. So eventually we did get out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but I called my coworker called me that she was out with the fire drill. So the fire alarm went off. Half of the school exited and half of the school stayed. So yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I just recently went through, we talked a little bit off air, Alice training at my new school district. And the local police department fired blanks in the hallway and in the same room that I was in. And just like you, I've been to gun ranges. I was a Boy Scout. I've shot rifles and shotguns. Guns don't. I worked at a Dick's Sporting Goods and sold guns, like at the lodge. Like guns never scared me. And then to hear this just happened last week, actually, to hear that sound in a building, and then in your classroom, and they were blanks. Was that a sound you ever thought you would hear in your entire life?
No, and I went to sleepaway camp. I shot rifles and stuff, but when it is in a different setting than you're expecting, it's shocking. And actually, the week before, or a week or 2 before, like the timeline is so like foggy to me, and I am missing like pockets of memory.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for sure. Last summer, I don't remember working the entire summer. I worked at the private practice, so I don't remember that. But we had security check that all our doors were locked because that's our order. We have to keep the doors locked. When the guy came by and I had a little magnet in my door, so the kids kept coming in, he said, "You're too young to remember Columbine." And I was like, I am young, thank you. But also like I'm aware of it. I was aware even at a young age that was a scary thing, that people died. And then after our shooting happened, I was like, thank you for offending me. I kept that door shut, and I was like, yes, I know about Columbine, thank you. And now we're one of those. Now we're talked about with Columbine, and we've had teachers from Columbine come talk to us, and we're in that same boat now.
We, the school district I worked at the time of Parkland, I want to say a week later or 2 weeks later, we had a group of students that were no longer students barge their way into the high school, and we got put down on lockdown for about 60 minutes. And I was with my multiple handicap room at the time. So trying to explain it to students that, like, hey, don't be afraid. But at the same time, the kids, they know that there's something different between a drill and serious. Yeah. How long did it take till you went back to school to work, or were you back the next day, or?
No. We went back, the teachers went back, I think it was 12 days after it happened.
Oh, wow.
And then the kids came back exactly 2 weeks after it happened. And it took us a while for us to get our belongings. So like we when I exited the room, I did not have my purse on me. I had it around me, and the cops were like, nope, can't bring that.
Oh, wow.
My car was on campus. I lived by myself. My car keys were on my lanyard. My house keys were on my lanyard. My wallet, I had no cash, no card, nothing. So luckily my parents do live in the area, and I was able to stay there as long as I needed, but I didn't have clothes. And I was stuck like that for 3 days until they gave word that we could get our cars and our belongings they had in bags for us. So that was a little bit of time, but I was fine. We in the 1200 building, which is the building that everything happened in. That was like the only contained building. In Florida, we have a lot of these outdoor buildings, I guess. So this was the one that was like, there were 2 exits of it. A lot of teachers and students have not gotten their belongings back from that.
To this day?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
There were some things that were able to be recovered, but most of the things are still in there. We've got like these giant Recordexes that were just bought. Those are in every single classroom in there. We had multiple offices, and then just general belongings from the teachers, from the kids, backpacks, and everything.
So how do you, and this is where we're going to transition to what you've done since then, how do you even work on therapy when that's on the kids' minds? Like, I'm thinking, with my high school students, I'm doing a reading comprehension task, and we're using a document talking about landing on Mars, or a vocabulary skill, or even articulation.
Yeah.
How did you start? I don't even know the question to ask in that situation.
It was so hard. There was no rule book for this. So our re-entry, or we had an open house to get kids ready, and that was just them getting back on campus with their parents and everything, and that was a night that we organized. Then we had basically the first 2 months after coming in, there was no instruction at all. We had beanbag chairs in the rooms. We had games, the most donations like you've ever seen in your life. We had so many things available to us, and it was really just about being comfortable with the setting again. And we're lucky in a sense that this is a trauma that we all share, because we're being able to be given support for it. In other places that have had this kind of, or a trauma that's not specific to every single person, you're not going to get that kind of support. So we tried to get back to whatever we could, but a lot of the times it was me being available to the kids. What would you like to talk about? Here's how we can implement a lesson into this. What homework do you have? What classwork do you have? Can I work on this with you guys? But really it was more about building that relationship. And that's one reason that I've stayed at Douglas so long, is that I can't leave these kids, and they're my support as much as I'm theirs.
I guess that puts a different spin when you're in an IEP meeting and a parent's like, my kid needs an extra 30 minutes. There's so many more important things than that, right?
Yeah, definitely. Or the fact we also get that these parents that come in and they say, well, you don't know what my kid went through. And I'm like, no, I know exactly what your kid went through. And I don't say this to them, obviously,
Right.
but it's the separation that my kid went through trauma. I did too. And so did all these people here, and they're still here fighting for your kid. But it's also given a trauma to the parents, and that's vicarious trauma. And they have their own, and they're spinning it one way, and they're being activists in one way, and they're fighting for their kid whatever way they see. And I can't hold that against them, but it definitely, I have to try hard.
So how did that spur you starting the PTSD-SLP?
So I just spoke at FLASHA in June, the Florida American Speech Language Hearing Association. And I gave a 2-hour presentation about my experience, and the feedback that I was getting was amazing. I had all these people that I super respected coming up to me and saying, like, you need to do more than this. And that was really the first time that I shared my story at all in public. And the reaction to it went really well. So my ego when I got off that thing was at an all-time high. They're like, you can do this. So I don't ever have a problem with presenting or speaking. So I took that first step, and then in the year and a half since everything, actually in 2 days it'll be 18-month anniversary, and that's the first day of school. In the 18 months since this has happened, I've been contacted by many different SLPs all over the country that have been through deep trauma. And one thing that really spoke to me was a woman posted on the national Facebook group for speech language pathologists, and it was after the California wildfire. And she said, how can I get back to treating lisps when their house is burned down and they've got nowhere to go? And although it was a different trauma than I experienced, I completely understood, because it's like that question you asked me, how do you care about a 12th grader that can't say his R's and he's in gen ed, but he just went through this terrible thing? So I felt like I could help other SLPs with PTSD themselves, or treating kids with PTSD. And I want them to know the signs. That was the way I really fell into this, that it was people contacting me saying, I need help. My kids need help. Do you have any resources? And because we're in this unique situation that Douglas is being given speakers and research and stuff, like, I can provide that help to other people. And I just want to also be support that I know exactly what you're going through. I acted exactly like this, or I know people who did act like this, and you're not far from healing. You're doing as best as you can, and I want to be that support for them.
So where do they find the way to reach out to you? Because I know you and I just kind of connected through a Facebook group.
Yes.
By chance,
Yes. So I just started. I think it's 2.5 weeks old. I started an Instagram. And it's called PTSD.SLP. So it's the PTSD-SLP, and I like rhyming. And it started off as a joke, really, that, like, what would I call myself if I had one? And it became a way for me to post things that other people have access to. And I felt like Instagram was a good way to get started. And then when I posted on the Facebook group, the speech one, I think that's one that we connected on.
Yeah.
You had some people of other ages, other resources that were like, I don't use podcasts, I don't use Instagram. So I also came up with a Facebook group that way I can post things in a closed group that people can express themselves. And even I get amazing messages on Instagram, like, I've been through this trauma. Wow. And it's so, like, I never expected anything like this, and it's just in the beginning stages. But I just want a place to put my resources that they can then look back on and find that somewhere. That's the beginning of it and the reason that I created it.
So how did you cope with it? Like, I know how I would cope with, I don't know how I would cope with it, but I have an idea of how I would cope with it, and it's probably not the most healthy. How did you cope with it, if you don't mind going into
Not at all.
that?
No, not at all. And I think that was a great way. I like using I statements and speech therapy and everything.
Yeah.
I think that was a great way to trick my kids into going to therapy. That I was like, I would just be sitting in there and I could tell that they're having a hard time. And I'd be like, no, I know exactly what you're experiencing. I talked to my therapist about that last week. And it creates a bond, but also allows them to feel like that's acceptable. This person that I respect is going to therapy, and she's doing this. So a lot of kids have done it after like listening to me say that I go to therapy. I'm also totally accepting of medication. I've never, even when I have a headache, I don't take like a pill for that. I'd rather just get through it. But
Right.
I had to learn to ask for help, which is new for me because I'm very independent. I don't want help from anyone, but I had to break down in order to be like, I need help. And that was with the help of therapy, and with the help of medication to get through in those first really trying months. I have realized through therapy that I've always had anxiety and I didn't really know that. And it comes across as anger. That was really how it came out. But now, before the shooting, we have a great yoga program at Stoneman Douglas, and the yoga teacher, we actually have like one of the largest programs.
Wow.
It's ridiculous. One of the largest programs in Florida and the United States, I think. But she's an amazing yoga teacher, and she does teacher yoga for us, and she did it on Monday. So I had just gotten into yoga, and luckily I used those practices to help with my mindfulness after. And mindfulness is like a huge thing in our school now, that we have mind body ambassadors and our students, that they go out and teach us mindfulness practices. I just went to a training last week taught by like seniors and juniors, and it was amazing that they are trying to say, all right, we got to shake it out now, we got to do these. We could use that for kids before a test, and I do on my page. I want to show them, here's one mindfulness technique. If you are having a panic attack, if you as the SLP, if your student is having a panic attack, here is a way for you to cope with that. And coping strategies is really like, if you think about speech therapy in general, like stuttering. I love treating stuttering. We teach them strategies, right? So we need to teach our kids coping strategies for when they're out in the real world, when they're at college and no one cares that they went to Douglas and had this trauma, or no one knows. That's what we have to train them for. So I'm giving my kids as many strategies as I can to survive once they're out there, and they're very receptive to it.
You said something very early in that answer about how you had to take care of yourself. And it reminded me, I don't remember who I heard talk about this, but they said it's kind of like on an airplane. They tell you to put your oxygen mask on so that you don't pass out. Yeah. And take care of everyone else around you. Yeah. I know as an SLP, we have a tendency to burn the candle, not just on both ends, but on every part that we can. Did this change the way you made a hierarchy of what was important, what was not important through your therapy sessions and even personal life, I guess?
Absolutely. I feel like I'm a better conversation partner. I am about to post about active listening, and I want speech pathologists to take that into effect. When they're in there and they're just talking, it's not helpful. And the most asked question is, how do I let my kids know that I want you to talk to me? And this is one way of doing that, like letting them talk without going or no. Like, you can't be judgy, and that's what active listening, you need to be able to process things and not just talk. I talked about recently that like my way of relaxing previously was just watching Netflix. Like I could do that all day, every day, sit on the couch and be fine with it. But I had to say to myself, like, this isn't productive. What else could I do? So after about 3 months after the shooting last year, it was just turning into summer. And I ended up getting a dog. and I have trained him to be a therapy dog.
So great.
Yeah, he's gone through 4 6-week courses, and I have to go with him as his handler. But that's become a passion of mine. So I turned this like Netflix obsession to making it something more productive. So I can take him to school. I haven't done that. But his name is Dougie, named after Stoneman Douglas High School. Hypoallergenic, so I took care of the allergies. I'm allergic to dogs.
What kind of dog?
He's a golden doodle, but he's black.
Oh, my sister has both a golden doodle and a labradoodle. They are so cute and energetic.
He is a mush. He is my emotional support dog, and that's for the purpose of my apartment and everything. And I truly needed an emotional support dog. I had always thought, well, that's not real. Emotional support, like people are using that as a loophole in the legal system. But until I needed one, because I'm living by myself, I did not want to move back in with my parents because I needed support. This dog helped me more than you can ever imagine. He is like the light of my life, and the training gave me a passion with that, and that has only doubled with this Instagram and Facebook thing. I have now felt a second time that I've been passionate about something, and it's been with the therapy dog training and with this Instagram helping other people. So I really just want to help and spread the message and whatever I can do to help other people in the same position or different positions.
If somebody is listening to this and they feel that, they could have been in a school, they could have been, up here in Cincinnati, we had the Dayton, Oregon district shootings, or down in El Paso. What's the first step for that person to identify? Let's say they're feeling a bunch of different emotions. In your opinion, what's one of the first things that they should do before going back into the therapy setting and say, let's help everybody?
I've learned that you need to take care of yourself first. It's with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you cannot expect kids to come in that do not have food, shelter, water, love, things like that, and expect them to be top performers. You can't do it. And it's the same thing for myself. I cannot be expected to be at my best if I'm not taking care of myself. I have to make it a priority. I'm still working on that with the gym. I did go to the gym before everything happened. I had just for 2 years, the only time I've ever worked out in my life, I did 2 times a week. And after the shooting happened, I have not been back for a year and a half. I've gone maybe.
Oh my gosh.
I can't get the motivation to do that. But I like to meditate. I like to journal. That's one way that I cope. And it's also a memory aid for me, because I do have the memory trouble now. And that has helped me relate to ESE kids now more than ever. I was a top performing kid in high school. I was in AP honors classes. And when I first came into the school system, and I was like, this is the work you're working on in 12th grade and you can't read. This is the first time that I've been frustrated that why am I not able to remember this? I had a ridiculous memory before. I remembered people's names that I met when I was 5, and now I can't remember people's names that I just met. So I have to change my outlook on a lot of things. And once I've been able to put my needs there, I can be a better helper to that of my kids and my coworkers.
Will your memory recover as you get farther away from the trauma, or is that something that take it as it goes?
I think it will recover. That is one of the side effects of PTSD, that there's memory issues. Some people have it. That's why it's so interesting, because Douglas is a freaky little control group, that we have some staff members that you feel like nothing ever happened to them. And then you have others that are still so sensitive and effective. And then you have people in the middle, and everyone has different issues. And a lot of us do have memory problems, but the memory issues are, I have one friend that has memory problems from the 3 months after it happened, has no memory of those 3 months. And I remember those very well. And it hasn't been until later that I realize I'm missing things. My learning curve is way worse. working in the skilled nursing facility. I just started that, and being PRN, I'm not in there working every day. And to do an evaluation now, I'm finding it incredibly difficult to learn that information if I'm not in there with repetitions every single day. And it does make me nervous that I don't know if I can learn at this pace anymore. But it will get there. And therapy says that it takes time. But I need to use those memory aids that I was taught in the class, and I'm like 90 years old, but it'll get there, and I'm not worried about it. I just know that I have to use strategies myself.
So we're approaching, you said it was 18 months and 2 days.
Yep.
This will be the school year that's 2 years post-shooting. Is there anything that you guys need down there, or is there anything you need from everybody listening, or like, how quickly did you guys recover as like as a school to go back to, or you have not?
We have not. We are still working on it. The first 5 months after the shooting, so it happened in February, and then we ended school like beginning of June. That was not very academic. It was just, you guys are here, you're getting used to the campus again. And then last year when we returned, I was looking forward to it. It seemed to be going well. And then we had unannounced fire alarms go off. And every time something like this, like with the fire alarms happening, the other mass shootings that keep happening, it keeps bringing down the healing. And with going into the school year with just these 2 shootings that happened last weekend, I have kids texting me like, I'm not coming to school, I'm scared. And they have a right to be scared, you know?
Right.
They see things that haven't really changed so much, and they see some things that have changed too much for their liking, you know? So, and you can never please anyone. That's one thing about this, is that you have, our principal last year sent us an email that was like, these are two emails from parents I got. One of them said, your classes aren't doing anything. When are you going to get back to normal? And then the other one was like, you guys are working too much. So like, you can't please everyone. And it's hard. You're also dealing with teachers that are traumatized and students that are traumatized, and those aren't always going to line up. I just know that like, for my healing and just my personality, I want to help as many people. I've always been a helper. I think that's one of the reasons why I went into this profession. I'm like that with my friends. I'm the one that they call and they're venting, and I'm a good listener. So I think in this situation, I'm a good person to have. But I also, like you were saying, you don't know how you're going to act in that situation. I'm very surprised how I acted within my room on that day. That I don't have any kids. I've got this dog. I'm a dog mom now. But I felt like I was very maternal and protective. And if you would have told me, oh, you would have been protecting these kids and like putting yourself at risk, I would have been like, no, like. So I'm very proud of how I acted, and I feel like in crisis, I've always been calm and collected. My mom had a heart attack like the last day of school my first year.
Oh no.
And I don't know if it was from me being in a medical setting, like during my internship, but I'm in there and my anxiety was rearing its head as anger, but I was in there and I was calm and I understood what was going on in there. I'm like, nope, she's fine. She's okay. Like, so I guess it's just, you have to do self-actualization. You have to take the good with the bad. I realize that my anxiety can turn into anger. I need to watch how that comes out, because I could turn it at coworkers, but I really just want to go into this year as a positive outlook as I can. And I am excited for this new year. We have new administration that's there. And that's like somewhat of a hot topic. But I'm putting a positive spin on it. I'm excited for this change, but other people are not ready for change yet. So it's really difficult to please everyone in every aspect of this. It's change.
I'm going to ask a question, and if you don't want to answer it, please tell me to shut up. I don't even know how to word this. How do you walk by the spot where you know there was a student or there was a gun hole, how do you walk by? Did they fix that? How do they handle the memorial? Like, I went to Kent State University, which was the site of the National Guard shooting. And what they have in the spot where the 4 Kent State students were killed are 4 never going off like lanterns.
Okay.
Kind of marking where the body was so that no cars can park in that spot. And people purposely try to avoid walking in those spots because you're on holy ground, kind of.
Yeah.
How does that work in a public school? And again, if you don't want to answer that, I understand.
I'm open about it. This is actually a very hot topic right now with the building itself, because this is a building just on its own. There's actually like GoFundMe pages right now about getting a tent to cover it, or like getting a big banner to go around it. So right after it happened, they fenced it up. So there's a massive fence around it right now. I think it's like 12 feet high.
So that building's never been opened.
Because of the trial, the upcoming trial.
Okay.
So I have kids that ask me all the time, and this is like an ESE kind of thing, that they need constant reassurance and everything. So the building is still up there. It hasn't been opened. The windows that had bullet holes in them are like covered by plywood. But there's a 12-foot fence that went around, and people, especially right after the shooting, we were getting these banners from everywhere in the world. So they're attached to it, like, this school is sending you love. We love you.
Oh, yeah.
So they're everywhere, but the building is still there. And me personally, I'm not affected by the building. The building did nothing to me. My first room was in the teacher planning area there. I lost friends in that building. I didn't know any of the kids personally, but like, the building isn't a site of stress for me. And if I did let it consume me, it's right outside my door. I'm now closer to it than I was. And if I let it consume me, it would be a problem. But what I tend to do is ignore things. I ignore the problems. I put it out of my mind, and it's like, it's not even there. So right now we have people in the community trying to raise money to put a tent over it, a tarp over it. And that maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but really the building is going to be there until the trial is over. And it's not our property anymore. We used to have guards outside it all the time. I think maybe we still do. And we have a lot of security on campus right now. But the community, like you were saying with the lanterns and everything at Kent State, right after the shooting, we had so many memorials. It became like our school was a memorialization, and it became like a tourist trap, that you would have people pulling up on the lawn, and outside there was a flower garden, and there were crosses and Jewish stars outside, that people were laying like their medals that they put around them. We also have a public park that's right across the street pretty much. That became another shrine to it. And all this stuff has been collected, and it's being archived by the community somewhere. And that's really great. And last year they were trying to get away from all that memorialization. They're like, we need to stop this from continuing. There were banners everywhere you look. Our computers, the staff members said MSD Strong. It was all this MSD Strong hashtag everywhere. And this year is the first year that it's not our computer screen. Our shirt doesn't say MSD Strong. We are still MSD Strong, but it's not in our face all the time. And I think that's the way that you have to think about the memorialization of things. If you make it a shrine, it'll be a shrine. We have this amazing garden that's run by one of the teachers, Mr. Peter, called Marjorie's Garden. It's outside. It's the most ridiculous school garden you've ever seen. They grow vegetables. Got like this massive telescope, and they go on the weekends that they clean this thing up. We've got the Kindness Project. People from all around the country have painted rocks, and we've got these amazing gardens of just rocks with positive messages, and they hope to spread kindness, and it's really awesome. I've been lucky to be a part of that. But they've stopped with the school memorialization to an extent. And they're just trying now it's really just like, what do we do with this building that we don't have control over anymore? It's property of the state. And how can we move on without moving on?
Rachel, you're awesome, and I really appreciate you just sitting down to talk about this and for what you're doing with PTSD SLP. And it's hard to say, by the way. I'm a speech pathologist and I can't say it. I would love to work with you more. We have the Speech Science has SLPs helping SLPs. The idea is a Facebook group that if you're an SLP and your school gets hit by a tornado and you lose all your therapy supplies, can we organize something? So I'd love to work with our two groups. But before I get you to go, or before you go, is there something that you wanted to talk about or wish I would have asked about?
Some people, I feel like when they find out about it, even now, like I'll go out and I'll meet someone and they'll be like, oh my gosh. And like, I'm able to talk about it and I have been for a while, but I still, it's hard to be at school. Like I said, I try to ignore things and I'm in a positive world and whatever. And I put on a front a lot of times for my kids and my coworkers that I want to make it I want it to be a tight ship and everything's working well, but you can't make things go the way you want all the time. And you just have to do your best every single day. I tell my kids that, like, do your best, because I don't want them to think that they have to get 100% on this test, that they weren't there for the lesson because it was during that time that we got no instruction. Like, it's really hard for them, but we're doing our best and we're trying to get there, and my kids are doing really well as they can. And I guess you're going to see more of those kids in the news, just like being activists and out there and trying to change laws and do whatever they feel will change things to stop this from ever happening again. But also, I want you to know that PTSD is like subjective. So what one person might think is traumatic, another person might not. So I want SLPs to be very mindful that you may have a kid sitting in front of you that's presenting as ADHD when they're so jumpy and everything, but that's actually trauma related, that they're looking at the door, they're jumpy because of that. So that's my message, is like, look for these signs, make sure these kids are taken care of, make sure you're taken care of so you can take care of your kids, and just do your best.
Rachel, I want you to know that you're always welcome onto the show. If you want to talk therapy dogs in a couple of weeks after you started doing that, you're more than welcome. If you want to sit with Michelle, Michael, and I and discuss pop news of speech therapy, you're more than welcome as well. So Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I loved it.
Welcome back to Speech Science. I'm Matt Hutt, joined as always by Michelle Wintering.
Hi again, Matt.
And Michael McLeod.
What's up, dude?
And like I said in the interview, I would love to have Rachel come back on as a guest co-host or to talk about therapy dogs later on when she's doing that. That's pretty cool. We have something for you, though, the listener at home. Head over to exceptionaled.com and go over to the conferences pages. You can check out the Teaching Social Skills 2019 conference just in time for the new school year. 6 presenters focus on strategies and implementation to help you be more effective in your support services and clinical practice. And guess what? It's free. Register now for free access to all 5 live webinars and 1-year access to the recorded courses. You must register, however, by midnight, August 31st, 2019. So that starts when it is August 19th through the 23rd. You can sign up for the live stuff. So get the plug in there for our friends over at XPN.
Hey, we love them over at XPN. I was going to throw in... I was thinking about this from our last conversation with the article and the grieving process of parents getting a diagnosis, especially with special needs. And it made me think of, I had to look it up. I'll share the link with you all so we can link it on the podcast. But it's called Welcome to Holland by Emily Pearl Kingsley. It was written back in 1987, and she wrote it to describe what it's like raising a child with a disability. And she made the comparison to when you're going to have a baby, it's like planning a vacation to Italy. You make all these plans and you buy guidebooks and all this, and then you get on the plane, and when you get off, you're in Holland. And
Yep.
they didn't take you somewhere terrible, horrible, disgusting, dangerous. It's just different. And you have to, buy new guidebooks and buy new clothes and learn a new language. And you've got to make adjustments, but it doesn't mean it's not a wonderful experience. So I will link to that because I think that that's kind of what we were just talking about a little bit.
Michelle, you've always got the coolest little books or poems because, there's that. And then when my dog passed away years ago, you gave us that Across the Golden Rainbow book, and I cried like a child.
Yeah.
So is this poem going to make me cry? I don't want to read it.
I don't think it'll make you cry. It's more of a feel good working with our families and the awesome families we work with.
So have this newest article that we're going to talk about, the research article, is coming out of the American Journal of Speech Language Pathology by Krista Wilkinson and Marissa Maydell. They look at how to help eye gaze with communication devices. Do you guys have any history with eye gaze?
Very minimal, but it's something I'm certainly quite interested in.
A little bit in grad school, and I worked in the AAC lab, but that's about it. I haven't had a chance to use it in my professional life yet.
I've had a couple instances with eye gaze, and a lot of times I have trouble either getting the student or the patient to want to look at the individual part of the page, or I had one student perseverate on the butterfly icon that we were using, and that really messed up the selection choices. So this looks at how small changes of organization could impact the way we build our communication pages. And guess what? Participants were significantly faster to fixate on the target and select it when the light-colored symbols were clustered together. Like, that blows my mind because I'm so used to looking at core boards where you have like all the nouns on one side and then the verbs are like in the middle, and it's very similar to like lamp boards that have like different colors, and then if you goof it up too much, then everyone's got different colors everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's because it's giving them a broader, basically a larger subject to look at when the light colored symbols are clustered together. But that's really interesting.
The greatest clinical impact is the finding that clustering symbols reduced attention to distractors, given that individuals with disabilities may be prone to distraction. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes if I'm building a board that's not like already pre-built, I'll try to make every image a different color or a different background to try to help make them stand out. And this article or this research is kind of saying maybe don't do that.
I want to see it in action. I want to see this. So they're talking about grouping the similar, like the grouping all the food items are with the same color background, right?
Correct. So that way you don't have like oranges with yellow, apples with purple, bananas with green. They would all have the same border or the same background color.
I mean, I think that helps with categories too.
True.
Yeah, I think a lot of AAC research has kind of shown to do that in terms of whether you're grouping it by nouns and verbs or coloring by category, kind of the clustering of symbols. I think this also speaks about in terms of clustering in terms of position, like putting some of the buttons and some of the choices in one specific place. So I think this is also about placement. As well as color. So I think this is very valuable research for anyone working with eye gaze.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. All right. We want to know from you. Head over to our website, speechsciencepodcast.com, and email us speechsciencepodcast@gmail.com, or give us a phone call, 614-681-1798.
And I want to hear. I want to hear from some. I know there's speech pathologists who listen to us who AAC is their love and their passion. So give us your feedback.
True. And also we love them over at Talking with Tech, and they owe us to come over here and tell us something. So
yeah,
I will just leave it there. I figured our go home article tonight, the one that we always try to leave on a happy, is about those Philadelphia Eagles, Michael.
Yeah, my least favorite team.
Is it really?
The Cowboys are my least favorite, and then the Eagles. I'm a Giants fan. Giants fan all the way.
Can you like their stadium just a little bit based on this article, though?
Their stadium is definitely a million times nicer than the Giants stadium. 100%.
Isn't that the new one in Brooklyn, though? By the way,
it's not. No, that's the basketball one.
Oh, that's the basketball.
The Giants one is in. It's basically in a giant a giant parking lot in New Jersey.
Well, the NFL has been trying its best over the last couple of years to be more inclusionary. There's been a multitude of stadiums to open up autism sensory rooms or to make the game day experience better for the whole family. And the Philadelphia Eagles now have a sensory room of their own. So fans with sensory challenges don't have to feel left out. I'm kind of watching the video as we talk, and it looks no different than what you would expect out of a normal preschool. But then they've got the mascot wearing his own noise cancellation headphones, and they've got the big windows to watch the football game. I love these kind of things.
Yeah, one thing I can definitely say since moving to Philadelphia is the Eagles and the Phillies and the Flyers and the Sixers, they go above and beyond for individuals with special needs. It's definitely the self-advocacy groups here in Philadelphia are very, very strong. And the sports teams here, I know they have tons of sensory-friendly nights. They do a lot of autism walks in the area where the stadiums are. I know a lot of the players do a lot of work in the community with special needs and special education. So it's definitely something that is a big deal here in Philadelphia. And the sports teams really do a tremendous job. I lived in New York all those years, and I never really, I'm sure they did great work with these populations. I just didn't really know about it as well. But it's something that is marketed very well here.
What I thought was kind of cool, and I don't know, Michelle, if you saw this, was that they have sensory bags at all the guest services locations. And inside the sensory bags are noise-canceling headphones, a fidget tool, verbal cue cards, and a weighted lap pad.
That's great.
Right?
That is excellent. Excellent.
It's very simple things that can make a big difference for a variety of people. If you don't have a child, you don't understand the struggle that it is sometimes just to do daily tasks with a child, like 2 to 6 year old. And then you add autism or any other disability or deficit or disorder onto it, and the kid comes first. It's always what it happens. And it's awesome that parents or family members can still enjoy the activities and have something to help the child or the adult from getting too much input is the word I was trying to and you just said it there, or adult. I think especially sports fans are all ages, right? And especially
from Philadelphia and New York.
Yeah, teenagers and college age students and young adults and even elderly and older. There may very well be a lot of people in a variety of ages who could benefit from the weighted vest or the headphones or whatever it is. There you go. I could use the fidget spinner.
I have a fidget spinner in my hand at all times, and this one is an outlet plug, which is probably not safe. We want to hear from you. Head over to our website.
Plugged in.
That is true. Head over to our website, speechsciencepodcast.com, and email us speechscience@gmail.com, or hit us on the hashtag #SSPod. Let's send this thing home the right way. And we'll start with Michael. What was that?
My husband just sneezed. Sorry.
Oh my gosh, we heard that all the way over here.
Yeah, that was wild.
Before we send it home the right way, Michael, what are you doing this week that you are excited or looking forward to?
I'm going to continue to meet with some school leadership from the schools around the area and kind of learn from them, and continue to meet with other school SLPs and other SLPs within the community, and just keep collaborating. That's really one of my, like I said before, one of my favorite things to do is just learn from other SLPs. I learn more from other SLPs than I'll ever learn in any CEU course or any classroom or anything like that. So the more I can do that, the better clinician I can be.
Michelle, what are you looking forward to this week?
Well, as you guys know, I'm co-treating and building my caseload, but I was going to mention the co-treating specifically because I've had a chance to do some co-treats in the new clinic that I'm in, and learning from other professionals, not just SLPs, but OTs and PTs. So.
Real quick, I've never co-treated with a PT. Have you guys ever co-treated with a PT?
Yes, I have.
Yes, I have.
I've always co-treated with the OT, but never the PT.
You can always work on your speech language goals.
I know. It just usually they're like running down the hallway, and I'm like, I'll wait for them to come back.
No, I've really enjoyed working with them, and because I realized when I co-treat with them that there's many ways I can support their goals with minor tweaks in my treatments on my own.
That makes sense. I'm excited because I actually am very excited for this part of the school year where I get to print out the class list or the schedule of all of my students, and then they get to be spread around 5 different tables in my now speech palace is what the other SLPs have nicknamed my classroom, and then I get to build my schedule.
Oh, that's a fun puzzle.
I love schedule building, and it's like, all right, who can work with who, what goal can I mix together, and then where do they have class together that I don't have to waste 20 minutes walking around the building getting kids.
That was a memory that just popped up on my Facebook, actually, was all of the related service providers at the School for the Deaf and the Blind that I worked with, which the pullouts that we had to puzzle piece together, one kid could have speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, orientation, mobility, and Braille pullouts. That's 5. One kid.
Sounds like a whole day to me.
Yep. So it was a fun day, but also a crazy day working out that puzzle.
Our opening music tonight was Please Listen Carefully by Jazar. It's licensed under an attribution and share alike license. That's the music that plays when we answer the question, what is communication? Our bump music is the County Fair Rock, copyright a John Deku. You can find all his other music over at soundcloud.com/dirtdogmusic. And our closing music playing underneath of us is The Slow Burn by Kevin MacLeod. It's licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution license. In the immortal words of Janice Wright, always be a willow in the storm of life. You may want to be the big oak because he looks strong, but the oak will crack under pressure. The willow will bend and return to form. That's what the willow is doing outside right now as the storm rages on here in Cincinnati, Ohio. For Michelle Wintering and Michael McLeod, broadcasting from almost the Speech Palace, I'm Matt Hott. Till next week, so long, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
This has been an Exceptional Podcast Network production. Speech Science is edited and produced by MWH Production. Please follow Speech Science on Twitter at SpeechSciencePC and like our page on Facebook. For more original podcasts, please visit exceptionaled.com and rate and subscribe to our podcast anywhere you get your podcasts.